What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was only part of the story? Picture civilizations separated from us by thousands of years, yet possessing technologies so sophisticated they rival our modern achievements. We often imagine the past as a simpler time, a world of basic tools and rudimentary inventions. But what if that picture is incomplete? Hidden within the archaeological record are extraordinary machines, devices of precision, power, and purpose that defy conventional timelines and challenge our understanding of human progress. These aren't myths or speculative theories. They are tangible artifacts that continue to puzzle experts and ignite the imagination of everyone who encounters them. Today, we're setting out on a journey to explore 27 ancient machines that, by all accounts, shouldn't exist, but they were undeniably real. From the depths of the Mediterranean to the highlands of Peru, from intricate bronze gear systems to revolutionary energy devices, these creations reveal a side of antiquity rarely seen in textbooks. We'll uncover the secrets of their origins, the mysteries of their functions, and the profound questions they raise about the ingenuity of those who came before us. How did ancient engineers achieve such precision without modern tools? What knowledge was lost to time? And what can these marvels teach us about innovation today? This isn't just a catalogue of curiosities, it's an invitation to rethink history itself. Each machine tells a story of ambition, creativity, and the relentless human drive to understand and shape the world. As we delve into these wonders, you'll discover why they matter now more than ever, offering lessons in sustainability, craftsmanship, and the timeless spirit of exploration. So settle in and open your mind to the possibilities, because what you're about to witness will transform how you see the past, and perhaps even the future. Beneath the turquoise waves of the Mediterranean, near the island of Antikythera, a storm in the year 1900 drove sponge divers to a sunken Roman cargo ship. While recovering priceless statues and artifacts, they also pulled up a corroded, lumpy piece of bronze and wood that seemed almost like junk. For nearly 50 years, it sat in a museum storage box, its true nature completely overlooked. It wasn't until the 1950s that a science historian, examining the strange object with the help of new X-ray technology, made a stunning discovery. This wasn't a shapeless relic. It was an astonishingly complex clockwork device, an intricate assembly of precisely cut bronze gears housed in a wooden frame. Dated to around 100 BC, the Antikythera Mechanism has since been rightfully nicknamed the world's first known analog computer. The device's front and back faces were covered with dials and inscriptions, a user manual etched in bronze. By turning a hand crank on its side, the entire mechanism would whir to life. A series of at least 30 interlocking meshed gears, each with a specific number of teeth mathematically calculated to represent celestial cycles, would move the pointers across the dials. One hand could show the position of the sun in the zodiac, while another tracked the phase of the moon, displaying it on a beautiful, rotating silver and black ball. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and it even modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, a complex motion we now know is caused by elliptical orbits. This wasn't just a simple calendar, it was a dynamic, moving model of the known universe, a portable planetarium that could calculate the timing of major athletic games like the Olympics. The sheer sophistication of its gearing system is what truly baffles historians and engineers. The mechanism employs a differential gear, a complex arrangement that calculates the difference between two rotational inputs to produce a single output. This technology was previously believed to have been invented in the 16th century for use in automobile axles, yet here it was, fully realized in a 2,000-year-old device. The precision required to hand-cut these minuscule bronze gears, some with teeth just a millimeter long, implies the existence of specialized tools and a deep, established tradition of fine mechanics that we have no other record of. This wasn't a one-off experiment by a lone genius. It was likely a product of a school of thought, a technological lineage that has been completely lost to history. So who built this marvel? The language on the mechanism is Greek, and its calculations align with the astronomical theories of the Babylonians, suggesting a vibrant exchange of knowledge across ancient cultures. Many scholars believe it may have been created in a workshop connected to the legendary inventor Archimedes in Syracuse, though it was built after his death. Its presence on a Roman ship hints that it was likely plunder, a priceless treasure being transported to Rome, showcasing how advanced Greek science was highly valued even by their conquerors. The mechanism forces us to completely reconsider the technological capabilities of the ancient world. If they could create something this mechanically advanced, what other inventions have been lost, either still hidden in undiscovered shipwrecks or simply melted down for their raw materials over the centuries? The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a powerful, tangible reminder that our historical timeline of innovation is not a straight line of progress, but a story with incredible peaks that were later forgotten, waiting patiently beneath the sea to be rediscovered. While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a sophisticated understanding of the heavens, another ancient discovery suggests a grasp of a fundamental force that would not be officially harnessed for over a millennium: electricity. The story picks up in 1936 during excavations for a new railway line near Baghdad in the village of Qanat. There, workers uncovered an ancient tomb from the Parthian period, roughly 2,000 years old. Among the typical finds of pottery and ornaments was a most peculiar set of objects that would later become the center of a fierce and ongoing debate. The artifacts consisted of a simple 5-inch tall clay jar, a copper cylinder carefully soldered with a 60-40 lead tin alloy, and an iron rod. The iron rod was suspended inside the copper cylinder with an asphalt plug, which acted as both a seal and an insulator to keep the two metals from touching. When the jar was found, it showed signs of corrosion and contained a faint acidic residue, later identified as vinegar or wine. In 1938, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, who was working at the Baghdad Museum, studied the curious assemblage and proposed a radical theory. He suggested that if the jar were to be filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar, the device would function as a simple galvanic cell, producing a small electric current of about 1 volt. The principle is that of a basic battery. The acidic liquid acts as an electrolyte, causing a chemical reaction between the two different metals. The more reactive iron rod would act as the anode, surrendering electrons, while the less reactive copper cylinder would act as the cathode, collecting them. Connecting the two with an external wire would complete the circuit, allowing a tiny but measurable flow of electricity. If Koenig's interpretation is correct, this would mean that the Parthians, or perhaps the later Sasanians who also occupied the region, were experimenting with electrochemistry centuries before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in 1800. This extraordinary claim, of course, demands extraordinary evidence and has been met with understandable skepticism. The primary counter-argument is the complete absence of any associated objects that would confirm its use as a power source. There were no wires, no electrodes, and no electroplated objects found alongside these jars to suggest a practical application. critics propose more mundane, though still fascinating, alternative uses. The most widely accepted theory among skeptics is that these were sacred vessels used for storing important religious scrolls, likely made of expensive parchment or papyrus. The iron rod would have been a simple spindle around which the scroll was wrapped, and the insulating asphalt plug would have protected the precious texts from moisture and pests within the sealed clay jar. This explanation aligns with other finds from the region where scrolls were stored in similar protective containers. Yet, the experimental evidence keeps the electrical theory powerfully alive. In the 1970s, Egyptologist Arne Egebrecht created a replica of the Baghdad Battery, filled it with grape juice as the electrolyte, and successfully used it to electroplate a silver statuette with a thin layer of gold. This demonstration proved that even the small voltage it produced could, given enough time, facilitate a process like gilding. This opens up a compelling possibility. The ancient world is filled with mysterious examples of fine metalwork, such as extremely thin layers of gold on artifacts from Mesopotamia and Egypt. We have always assumed these were achieved through mechanical means like mercury gilding, but perhaps an electrochemical process was also within their reach. Beyond practical uses, the effect of a weak electrical current could have held profound religious or mystical significance. Imagine a priest in a dim temple, placing his hands on two of these cells connected together, feeling the strange, invisible tingle of energy. This sensation could easily have been interpreted as a divine presence, a magical force, or a form of sacred power, making the device a powerful tool for ritual and ceremony rather than a tool for industry. Whether it was a battery, a scroll holder, or something else entirely, the Baghdad Battery remains one of archaeology's most captivating enigmas. It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. Our interpretation of ancient technology is often constrained by our own modern frameworks. We look for practical, industrial applications because that is how we use technology. But ancient peoples operated within a different worldview, one where the lines between science, magic, and religion were often beautifully blurred. The true purpose of the jar may never be definitively known, but its very existence challenges us to keep an open mind about the ingenuity of the past and to consider that a simple clay pot might just hold the spark of a forgotten revolution. While the Baghdad Battery represents a quiet, enigmatic form of ancient power, our next machine was a terrifying and very public display of technological mastery that decided the fate of empires. Picture the scene. The year 678, a massive Arab fleet lays siege to the Byzantine capital of Constantinople. Emperor Constantine IV watches from the city walls as his vastly outnumbered navy prepares for a desperate defense. Then, from the prows of the Byzantine dromon ships, a nightmare unfolds. Tubes, often crafted in the shape of roaring bronze lions or other fearsome beasts, unleash a continuous stream of liquid fire that arches across the water. This is not ordinary flame. It clings to the wooden hulls of the enemy ships, it dances and crackles on the surface of the sea itself, and it cannot be extinguished by water. In fact, water only seems to make it rage more fiercely. The Arab sailors are thrown into a panic, their fleet is engulfed in an inferno, and the siege is utterly broken. This was the devastating power of Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's most closely guarded secret weapon. The true genius and enduring mystery of Greek fire lies in its unknown chemical formula, a state secret so valuable that it was said to have been delivered by an angel to the first Christian emperor, Constantine, and passed down through a single family of court chemists. The exact ingredients were never written down in any surviving document, and the knowledge died with the fall of Constantinople. Historians and chemists have been trying to reverse engineer it for centuries. Based on contemporary descriptions of its properties, it was a liquid that was ejected under pressure. It ignited on contact with air or water. It burned with immense heat and thick black smoke, and water was useless against it. The leading theory points to a mixture of crude petroleum or naphtha, combined with quicklime, sulfur, and possibly saltpeter. Quicklime heats up dramatically when it contacts water, which could have provided the ignition trigger when the stream hit the waves, creating a horrifying and seemingly spontaneous conflagration. The mixture was likely thickened with resins like pine sap to make it sticky and ensure it adhered to its targets, turning sailors and ships into inextinguishable torches. But the chemistry was only half of the invention. The delivery system was a marvel of early mechanical engineering known as a siphon, a pressurized projector that was far more advanced than simply throwing a fire pot. The liquid fire was stored in large, heated, sealed tanks below deck to keep it in a volatile state. It was then pumped through durable bronze pipes using a force pump, likely based on a design by the ancient inventor Ctesibius, and ejected through a nozzle or siphon, manned by a trained crew. The operator would aim the nozzle, and a lit fuse or a spark from a flint at the tip would ignite the pressurized stream as it shot forth. Some accounts suggest smaller, handheld versions existed, like early flamethrowers, for use by soldiers on the walls of the city. This combination of a terrifying chemical agent with a sophisticated delivery mechanism made the Greek fire projector a weapon system unlike anything the world had seen. The strategic impact of this technology cannot be overstated. For over 5 centuries, Greek fire secured Byzantine naval dominance in the Mediterranean, saving the empire from annihilation on multiple occasions. It was the ultimate psychological weapon. The mere threat of its deployment could cause enemy fleets to break formation and retreat. Its existence forced a complete rethink of naval tactics and ship design throughout the medieval world. This invention is a perfect example of necessity being the mother of invention. Faced with existential threats from all sides, Byzantine engineers turned to chemistry and mechanics to create a decisive advantage. They weaponized fear itself, and in doing so, they protected a bastion of knowledge and culture for centuries, proving that innovation in times of crisis can literally alter the course of history and preserve a civilization against all odds. While the terrifying spectacle of Greek fire showcased the Byzantine mastery of chemistry and pressure, another ancient innovation reveals a profound understanding of materials that has literally stood the test of time on a monumental scale. The legacy of Roman engineering is visible across the Mediterranean world, not in fleeting flames, but in enduring stone and mortar. From the soaring, unsupported dome of the Pantheon to the magnificent aqueducts that marched for miles across the landscape, these structures have weathered earthquakes, wars, and 2,000 years of elemental decay. The secret to their incredible longevity wasn't just ambitious design. It was a revolutionary building material that modern scientists are only now beginning to fully comprehend: Roman concrete. At the heart of this material science miracle was a special ingredient that the Romans called pulvis putiolanus, named after the deposits of volcanic ash they quarried near the town of Puteoli, modern-day Pozzuoli. This wasn't just ordinary dirt, it was a reactive aluminosilicate material. When mixed with lime and water, it triggered a complex chemical process known as a pozzolanic reaction. The lime and ash formed a crystalline binder that was not only exceptionally strong, but also possessed a seemingly magical ability to heal itself. If a tiny crack forms in Roman concrete over centuries, water seeping into that crack reacts with the remaining volcanic material, forming new crystalline structures that effectively glue the crack back together. This self-healing property is something modern concrete, which crumbles and cracks under stress, completely lacks. the Romans didn't just build for their own time, they built for eternity. But this miraculous concrete didn't mix or place itself. The creation and deployment of this material on such a colossal scale required a suite of ingenious machines powered by the most abundant energy source available, human and animal muscle. While we might picture laborers mixing mortar in troughs with shovels, evidence suggests the Romans used more efficient mechanical mixers. These likely took the form of large, treadle-operated paddles or even animal-driven wheels turning in a circular pit, ensuring a more consistent and homogeneous mix than hand mixing could ever achieve. This consistency was critical for the integrity of massive structures like the Colosseum or the foundations of harbors that were poured directly into the sea. Once mixed, the heavy concrete had to be lifted to great heights. This is where the Roman crane, or polyspaston, truly shines as a machine of immense capability. A simple yet powerful system of wooden beams, ropes, and pulleys, it was operated by men walking inside a large squirrel cage treadmill. This design allowed a small crew to lift phenomenal weights. A single crane might hoist stones weighing several tons, placing them with precision to form arches and vaults. The coordinated use of multiple cranes working in concert enabled the construction of edifices that still define the skylines of ancient cities. These machines transformed construction from a task of brute force into one of coordinated mechanical advantage, allowing the Romans to execute architectural visions that would be challenging even with some modern equipment. The true brilliance of Roman construction lies in this seamless marriage of material science and mechanical innovation. The concrete provided the durable bones of their buildings, while the mixers and cranes provided the muscle to assemble them. This synergy allowed for projects of unprecedented speed and scale, from the vast network of roads that connected the empire to the sprawling aqueducts that delivered fresh water to cities, supporting populations that would not be matched again in Europe for over 1,000 years. We often marvel at the grandeur of their finished monuments, but the real wonder is the sophisticated industrial process that made them possible, a process that balanced chemical knowledge with mechanical execution in a way that continues to inspire and humble engineers today. Moving from the massive construction projects and military engines of the Romans, we encounter a machine that was not about scale or power, but about a moment of pure, unadulterated intellectual inspiration. In the 1st century of the Common Era, in the great library and University of Alexandria, a mathematician and engineer named Hero described a device that would, in principle, lay the groundwork for an industrial revolution that wouldn't actually happen for another 1,700 years. He called it an Eulipyle, a name derived from Aeolus, the Greek god of the wind. At first glance, it seems deceptively simple. A hollow metal sphere is mounted on a central axle, with 2 oppositely curved nozzles protruding from its sides. This sphere is connected by the axle to a boiling water kettle below it. As the water in the kettle is heated over a fire, steam is forced up through the axle and into the sphere, finally escaping at high velocity out through the 2 bent nozzles. What happens next is a beautiful demonstration of a fundamental principle of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The force of the steam jetting out of the nozzles creates a thrust that pushes back on the nozzles themselves. Because the nozzles are pointed in opposite directions, this thrust creates a rotational force or torque on the sphere. The entire apparatus begins to spin faster and faster, whirring on its axis as the steam continues to blast out. This is the core principle of the steam turbine, a technology that would much later drive the massive generators that power our cities and the engines that propel our ships. Hero's device was without any doubt the world's first recorded steam engine. And this is where the story becomes not just one of invention, but of profound historical curiosity. The Eulipyle was not used to pump water out of mines, to grind grain, or to perform any form of utilitarian labor. In the vast and wealthy Roman Empire, where muscle power from slaves and animals was cheap and readily available, there was no pressing economic incentive to develop mechanical replacements. Instead, Hero describes the Eulipyle in his work Pneumatica as a temple wonder, a fascinating demonstration for philosophers and priests. It was likely used as an eye-catching spectacle to inspire awe and demonstrate the hidden powers of nature, a conversation piece for the intellectual elite. It was a toy, but a toy born from the most advanced scientific understanding of its age. This disconnect between capability and application forces us to confront the powerful role of culture and context in technological progress. The ancient world possessed the scientific knowledge but lacked the social and economic conditions that would later fuel the Industrial Revolution. The Eulipyle was a solution in search of a problem that ancient society didn't yet recognize it had. It remained a brilliant curiosity, a glimpse of a potential future path that was not taken. Its existence challenges the very idea of linear progress, showing us that a society can possess a transformative technology and yet, for a complex web of reasons, never transform itself with it. Hero's spinning sphere stands as a timeless monument to human creativity, a reminder that the spark of genius can appear long before the world is ready to fan it into a flame. While the Eulipyle demonstrated a grasp of physics for philosophical wonder on the other side of the ancient world, a brilliant mind was harnessing the laws of nature to solve a problem of immense and immediate practical concern. In 132 of the Common Era, during the Han Dynasty, a court astronomer and engineer named Zhang presented the emperor with a device that must have seemed like pure magic. China was, and still is, a vast land frequently shaken by devastating earthquakes. Timely knowledge of these distant disasters was critical for the emperor, not just for organizing relief efforts to save lives and rebuild, but also to demonstrate his divine mandate to rule. A major earthquake could be interpreted as a sign of heavenly displeasure. Zhang Heng's invention, the Hufeng Didongyi, or instrument for inquiring into the wind and the movements of the earth, offered a solution that was as breathtakingly beautiful as it was scientifically ingenious. The device was a masterpiece of art and engineering, taking the form of a large, ornate bronze urn nearly 2 meters in diameter. Its surface was intricately decorated, but the most striking features were the 8 dragon heads spaced equally around its top, each gazing outward in a cardinal or intercardinal direction: north, south, east, west, and the points in between. Crouched directly below each dragon, with its mouth open expectantly upward, sat a bronze toad. The arrangement was deeply symbolic, drawing from Chinese cosmology where dragons and toads were associated with the earth and celestial forces. But this was far more than just a sculpture. It was a sophisticated machine with a precise secret hidden within. Inside the sealed vessel, Zhang Heng had suspended a very large, very heavy inverted pendulum, a kind of weighted column that was free to swing. This central pillar was carefully balanced but could be knocked off center by the slightest tremors. The true stroke of genius, however, was in the linkage mechanism. The historians describe 8 connecting levers, one attached to the interior mechanism behind each dragon's head. These levers were likely designed to be triggered by the swing of the central pendulum. When seismic waves from a distant earthquake reached the capital, they would cause the heavy pendulum inside the urn to sway. This motion would engage the lever in the direction from which the tremors originated, tripping a release mechanism inside the corresponding dragon's head. The dragon would then open its mouth and a heavy bronze ball would drop out, landing with a loud, unmistakable clang into the mouth of the waiting toad below. The direction of the earthquake was instantly and dramatically revealed by which toad had caught the ball. The historical records attest to its startling accuracy. The most famous account describes an occasion when a ball dropped from the dragon facing west, yet no one in the capital had felt any tremor. Skeptics dismissed it as a false reading, but several days later, a messenger arrived from a village hundreds of miles to the west reporting that a major earthquake had indeed struck there on the very day and hour the machine had indicated. This successful long-distance detection proved the device's value and cemented Zhang Heng's reputation. Modern engineers and seismologists have built working replicas based on the ancient descriptions, confirming that the basic principle is entirely sound. While it couldn't measure the intensity or depth of a quake like modern seismographs, its ability to determine direction from such a distance was a phenomenal achievement in analog sensing. Zhang Heng's seismoscope stands as a perfect symbol of how the ancient world did not separate science from art or function from form. The dragons and toads were not mere decoration. They were an integral part of the device's interface, making its readings instantly understandable to any observer. It served a dual purpose. It was a supremely practical early warning system for the imperial bureaucracy, and it was a powerful symbol of the emperor's wisdom and his connection to the natural order. It represented knowledge made tangible, a mechanical oracle that could sense the invisible movements of the earth itself. In one beautiful bronze instrument, we see the complete integration of creative design, spiritual belief, and rigorous mechanical innovation, a testament to a civilization that saw all of these pursuits as parts of a single, harmonious whole. From the sophisticated seismic sensing of Zhang Heng's urn, we travel now to the sun-drenched fields and bustling docks of the ancient Mediterranean, where a deceptively simple solution to a fundamental human need was turning the impossible into the routine. The challenge was as old as agriculture itself. How do you move water from where it is to where you need it? Rivers flow in valleys, but crops grow on plains. Bilge water collects in the hulls of ships, threatening to sink them. The standard methods of the time bucket chains operated by human or animal labor were back-breakingly slow, inefficient, and limited in scale. Then came a revolution in the form of a brilliant, twisting design attributed to one of history's greatest minds, the Sicilian Greek mathematician, physicist, and engineer Archimedes. While he may not have invented it from scratch, his refinement and popularization of the device were so profound that it has carried his name for over 2 millennia, the Archimedes screw. The principle is one of elegant simplicity. Imagine a large, broad-threaded screw, a helical surface encased within a tight-fitting, hollow cylinder. The entire assembly is then set at an angle, typically between 30 and 45 degrees, with the bottom end submerged in the water source. The true magic happens when a person, or later an animal turning a treadmill, begins to rotate the screw within its casing. As the bottom edge of the spiral turns through the water, it scoops up a specific volume of liquid. With each continuous rotation, this pocket of water is trapped between the threads and the cylinder wall, lifted up the incline by the motion of the screw, and finally poured out from the top, opening into a waiting channel or cistern. It is a continuous flowing system, a mechanical conveyor belt for liquid that requires no complex valves or suction, just the relentless turning motion of a simple machine. Its immediate impact on the ancient world was transformative. For farmers, it meant they could efficiently irrigate previously arid land, lifting water from canals or rivers to feed complex networks of fields, boosting agricultural output and supporting larger populations. For sailors and shipwrights, it became an indispensable tool for drainage. The large, man-powered screws could be operated by a few men to swiftly evacuate water from the bilges of trading ships or even massive war galleys, a task that was critical for survival in an era of wooden hulls and stormy seas. The device was remarkably robust, capable of handling not just water but also slurries of water and solid particles, which made it incredibly useful in mining operations for draining underground shafts and even lifting ore fragments. What is most astonishing about Archimedes' screw is not its ancient origin, but its breathtaking longevity. While the materials have changed from wood to hardened steel and durable plastics, the fundamental design remains identical. Today, you can find modern versions of this ancient machine all over the world. They are used in wastewater treatment plants to lift raw sewage, in agriculture for irrigation and moving grain, in various chemical industries to handle viscous fluids, and even in some low-head hydroelectric projects to generate power in reverse. Its efficiency, reliability, and gentle handling of materials have ensured its place in the modern industrial toolkit, a 2,000-year-old invention that has never been rendered obsolete. This enduring utility forces a moment of reflection. We often associate technological progress with constant replacement, with the new superseding the old. The Archimedes screw stands in direct opposition to that notion. It represents a perfect solution, a design so fundamentally sound that it has never needed a major overhaul. It solves a universal problem with flawless mechanical logic. Its silent, continuous operation, lifting life-giving water against the pull of gravity, is a powerful symbol of practical genius. It makes you wonder how many other such perfectly adapted technologies from the ancient world have been lost to us, their simple brilliance erased by time, waiting only for another Archimedes to uncover their principle and once again change the world. Moving from the grand, water-lifting spirals of Archimedes, we now turn our attention to a far smaller, yet no less significant, artifact that offers a glimpse into the ancient world's understanding of light itself. In the mid-19th century, renowned archaeologist Austin Henry Layard was excavating the magnificent northwest palace of the ancient Assyrian capital of Nimrud. Amidst the towering Lamassu statues and intricate ivory carvings, one of the most curious finds was a small, oddly shaped piece of rock crystal, roughly 3,000 years old, uncovered in a room that also held ancient Assyrian tablets. It was meticulously ground and polished into a slightly oval form, about 1.5 inches across, with one flat face and one convex face that bulged outward. To the modern eye, its purpose was immediately recognizable. This was a lens. Today, it sits in the British Museum, labeled simply as the Nimrod lens, and it remains one of the most tantalizing and debated objects from antiquity. The most straightforward and widely accepted theory is that this was a simple burning glass. When angled correctly towards the sun, its convex surface would concentrate sunlight to a single, intensely hot focal point, capable of igniting tinder or dried leaves. This would have been an incredibly valuable tool in an age where creating fire quickly required striking flint against steel or laboriously spinning a fire drill. A skilled user could summon flame almost magically from the rays of the sun itself. Alternatively, its magnifying properties are undeniable. Held close to a small object, it could enlarge cuneiform script on a clay tablet or assist a master artisan in the intricate work of engraving seals or fine jewelry, allowing for a level of detail that would be incredibly difficult to achieve with the naked eye alone. In this capacity, it would have been a practical workshop tool, a precursor to the loupe still used by watchmakers and jewelers today. However, the existence of such a precisely crafted optical device in the 8th century before the Common Era inevitably leads to more speculative and thrilling possibilities. The most provocative theory, first proposed by the Italian science historian Giovanni Pettinato, suggests the Nimrod lens could have been part of a primitive telescope. Assyrian astronomers were keen observers of the heavens, and their detailed records of celestial events are well documented. Could a series of such lenses, mounted in a tube, have allowed them to see the craters of the moon or the moons of Jupiter long before Galileo? While an enthralling thought, the evidence for this is incredibly thin. The lens itself has significant optical aberrations. It doesn't produce a perfectly clear image and is far from the quality needed for serious astronomical observation. Furthermore, no other lens components or any artifacts resembling a telescopic tube have ever been found in Assyrian contexts, making this theory a fascinating but unproven leap. What makes the Nimrod lens so profoundly important, regardless of its exact use, is the simple fact of its existence. It forces a major recalibration of the historical timeline of optics. The conventional history tells us that the first corrective eyeglasses were invented in Italy in the late 13th century, and that the compound microscope and telescope emerged in the Netherlands around the turn of the 17th century. The Nimrod lens, however, sits in a museum case as silent, stubborn proof that the fundamental principles of light refraction, bending light to magnify or concentrate it, were not only understood, but were being practically applied by skilled craftsmen over 2,000 years earlier. It suggests a continuum of optical experimentation that we have simply lost sight of, perhaps because such delicate objects were made of perishable materials like glass or crystal and rarely survived the ravages of time. This one lens, preserved by chance, is a powerful reminder that a single artifact can challenge an entire narrative of scientific progress, suggesting that the path of discovery is not a straight line but a web of ideas, some of which are lost for centuries before being independently rediscovered. It stands as a testament to the quiet, practical genius of anonymous Assyrian inventors who looked at a piece of crystal and saw within it the potential to harness the very nature of light. While the Nimrod lens offers a window into ancient optical ingenuity, another discovery from the Mediterranean presents a puzzle of an entirely different nature, one not of function, but of communication. In the summer of 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernia was excavating the ruins of the Minoan palace of Phaistos on the island of Crete. As his team sifted through the ashes of a destroyed building, likely consumed by the same catastrophic fire that leveled the palace around 1700 BC, they uncovered a most peculiar object. It was a small, fired clay disc about 6 inches in diameter, and unlike any other artifact found in the ancient world, both of its faces were covered, from the outer edge spiraling neatly into the center, with a series of mysterious hieroglyph-like symbols. These were not hand-drawn or incised with a stylus. Astonishingly, each symbol was cleanly impressed into the soft clay with a separate, pre-formed seal, a technique that makes the Phaistos disc one of history's most captivating and utterly baffling enigmas. The immediate and most striking feature of the disc is its manufacturing process, a method that seems to leapfrog centuries of history. The 45 distinct symbols, ranging from human figures and animals to abstract shapes like arrows, shields, and flowers, were each created using a unique stamp. This means a Minoan artisan over 3,500 years ago had crafted a full set of reusable type, inked them with pigment, and then carefully pressed them into the clay in a precise sequence to form 241 impressions across 61 word groups, separated by incised line. This is effectively the earliest known example of movable type printing, a technology that would not be widely used again until Johannes Gutenberg's press in the 15th century. The implications are staggering. It suggests the Minoans may have had a system for the small-scale replication of texts, yet no other printed documents or even the stamps themselves have ever been found. Was this a lone experiment, a single craftsman's brilliant idea that never caught on? Or is it a ghost, a rare survivor of a much broader practice of printing that was lost when the Minoan civilization itself collapsed? For over a century, the disc's message has resisted all attempts at decipherment, earning it a reputation as the Minoan Rosetta Stone, but without a parallel text to provide the key. The script itself is unique. It does not match the other known Minoan writing systems of linear or Cretan hieroglyphics, though a few symbols bear a faint resemblance. The small amount of text, the isolation of the find, and the complete lack of any other examples have made cryptographic analysis nearly impossible. This has not stopped a torrent of theories about its meaning. Some propose it is a religious hymn or a prayer to a goddess, given the prevalence of symbols that could be interpreted as a shaved head, a symbol often associated with priests. Others suggest it is a legal document, a piece of ancient geometry, or even a board game. The most poetic theory posits that it is a narrative, perhaps the story of its own creation or a traveler's tale. Without context, every interpretation remains a shot in the dark, a reflection of the decoder's imagination as much as the Minoan author's intent. The Phaistos disc ultimately stands as a powerful monument to the fragility of knowledge. It is a single, solitary data point from a magnificent and sophisticated civilization that dominated the Aegean Sea, a culture that built vast palaces with advanced plumbing and created vibrant frescoes. Yet we cannot read their words. The disc is a stark reminder that innovation does not always follow a linear path to progress. A technology can be invented, used brilliantly, and then vanish completely, not because it wasn't effective, but because the societal conditions that supported it, the craftsmen, the patrons, the need, disappeared in the smoke of a volcanic eruption or the turmoil of invasion. It challenges our modern arrogance that assumes all important inventions will inevitably be adopted and improved upon. Some are simply lost, waiting in the ashes for millennia, not to provide an answer, but to ask a perpetual, humbling question about the winding, uncertain path of human creativity. Now, as we venture from the silent mystery of the Phaistos disc, we journey east to ancient China, where a different kind of ingenuity was rolling across the landscape, not to encode words, but to defy the very pull of the earth itself. Imagine a lavish imperial procession during the Jin dynasty, around the 3rd century of the Common Era. At its head, amidst officials and soldiers, rolls an ornate, man-powered carriage. Perched atop it is not a driver, but a small, beautifully sculpted figure, a man with an outstretched arm. As the procession winds through the dusty plains, turning left and right, navigating around hills and through valleys, the spectators witness something astonishing. No matter which way the chariot turns, the arm of the figure remains unerringly, miraculously pointed toward the south. This was the legendary south-pointing chariot, a mechanical marvel that served as a non-magnetic compass, guiding travelers long before the invention of the navigational tools we take for granted today. The sheer brilliance of this device lies in its purely mechanical solution to a complex problem of orientation. At its heart was a sophisticated system of differential gearing, a concept so advanced that it would not be reinvented in the West until the 17th century. The chariot's wheels were connected to a series of interlocking wooden or bronze gears. As the chariot moved in a straight line, both wheels turned at the same rate, and the gears moved in unison, keeping the figure locked in position. However, the true magic was revealed when the chariot began to turn. If the chariot turned right, the right wheel would slow down or even stop while the left wheel continued to turn. This difference in rotation was automatically calculated by the differential gear assembly, which would then engage a series of other gears to rotate the figure on its platform. The gears would precisely compensate for the angle of the turn, rotating the figure to the left at exactly the same rate the chariot was turning to the right, thereby keeping its arm perpetually aligned with the south. It was a flawless analog computer, performing real-time calculations using nothing but wood, metal, and impeccable geometric logic. This extraordinary invention was far more than a practical tool for navigation. It was a profound cosmological symbol. In ancient Chinese thought, the south was not just a direction, it was a position of supreme authority, associated with the emperor and the warmth of the sun. A device that could constantly indicate this sacred direction was a powerful emblem of cosmic order and imperial stability. It represented the human ability to harness mechanical principles to align with the fundamental order of the universe. The chariot was a tangible bridge between the earthly realm of engineering and the heavenly realm of the stars, demonstrating a worldview where science, philosophy, and spirituality were seamlessly intertwined. Its presence in a procession was a dramatic display of the emperor's mandate, a declaration that his rule was in perfect harmony with the natural world, guided by an unerring mechanical certainty. The influence of this principle echoes far beyond ancient Chinese processions. The fundamental concept of the differential gear, so brilliantly demonstrated by the south-pointing chariot, is the very same mechanism that, over a millennium and a half later, would become the heart of the modern automobile, allowing wheels to rotate at different speeds around a corner. This connection is a stunning example of how an idea can lie dormant or be applied in one specific cultural context, only to be rediscovered and repurposed to revolutionize an entirely different field. The chariot's legacy challenges the simplistic notion of independent invention, suggesting instead a long, interconnected thread of human ingenuity. It stands as a powerful testament to the timeless nature of a brilliant mechanical solution, proving that a principle conceived for imperial ceremony could one day become the unseen force powering transportation across the entire globe. While the Chinese south-pointing chariot used complex gear systems to maintain direction on land, the Vikings faced a far more formidable and fluid challenge, navigating the trackless expanse of the North Atlantic Ocean. Without a magnetic compass and often under skies perpetually shrouded by cloud and fog, their legendary voyages from Scandinavia to Iceland, Greenland, and even North America seem almost superhuman. The Norse sagas occasionally hint at their secret, mentioning a mysterious solar sign or sunstone that could reveal the sun's position even when it was completely hidden from view. For centuries, this was dismissed as mere legend, a fanciful myth. But modern science has now revealed that the sunstone was not only real, it was a breathtakingly simple and effective application of optical physics, a natural GPS powered by the sky itself. The principle behind this ingenious tool is light polarization, a property of light waves that is invisible to the human eye but can be detected by certain crystals. When sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere, it becomes polarized, meaning the light waves tend to vibrate in a specific direction relative to the sun's position. This pattern in the sky is consistent and reliable, forming a great circle 90 degrees from the sun, even on completely overcast days. The Vikings are believed to have used a type of crystal known as Iceland spar, a transparent form of calcite that is naturally birefringent. This means it has the unique ability to split a single beam of light into two separate beams. A navigator would hold the clear crystal up to the sky and slowly rotate it. When the crystal was aligned with the polarization pattern, the light passing through it would appear to change in intensity or clarity, creating a distinct visual signal. By finding this sweet spot from a few different angles, a skilled user could triangulate the exact position of the hidden sun, drawing an imaginary line across the sky to pinpoint its location with remarkable accuracy. This was not just a theoretical concept confined to ancient texts. In 2011, a team of researchers led by Guy Ropars conducted a landmark experiment. Using a precise piece of Iceland spar, they demonstrated that even under completely overcast twilight conditions, they could determine the sun's direction within a few degrees of accuracy. Then, in 2013, a remarkable archaeological find seemed to provide the smoking gun. During the excavation of a 16th-century English shipwreck, the Alderney, a block of Iceland spar was discovered near navigational instruments like a pair of divider calipers. While this ship was not Viking, it strongly suggests that the use of such crystals for marine navigation persisted in Northern Europe for centuries after the Viking Age, a tangible link to the Old Norse methods. The evidence, both experimental and archaeological, points to the sunstone being a standard and highly effective part of the Viking navigator's toolkit. This discovery fundamentally rewrites our understanding of Viking exploration. It moves their story from one of reckless, star-guided daring to one of calculated, scientific precision. They were not merely brave adventurers hoping to stumble upon new land. They were master mariners who understood and exploited a subtle property of nature that was completely unknown to the rest of the medieval world. Their tool required no batteries, no complex machinery, and never broke down. It was a perfect fusion of deep empirical observation and practical application. The Viking sunstone stands as a powerful symbol of how innovation isn't always about creating something new. Sometimes it is about learning to see the world differently, to perceive the hidden patterns in nature that others overlook, and to use that vision to navigate the greatest uncertainties. Moving from the open seas navigated by Viking sunstones, we find a different kind of precision at work, not in reading the sky, but in mastering the very stone beneath our feet. The ancient Egyptians are renowned for their monumental architecture, the pyramids, the temples, the towering obelisks, but it is often the smallest, most intricate details that reveal the true depth of their engineering genius. Scattered throughout their tombs and temples, and even in the artifacts left behind in workshops, is evidence of a tool that seems almost too simple for the miracles it performed. We see it depicted in wall paintings, a worker leaning over a block of stone, patiently pulling back and forth on a bow, a motion so familiar it could be mistaken for starting a fire. But this was no simple fire drill. This was the engine behind one of history's most perplexing manufacturing feats, the Egyptian bow drill. The core design was elegant in its simplicity. A central drill bit, typically made of copper, a relatively soft metal, was mounted on a vertical shaft. The top of this shaft was stabilized in a capstone, often held in the mouth of an assistant to keep it perfectly vertical and apply downward pressure. The real power came from the bow, a curved piece of wood with its string wrapped once around the drill shaft. By sawing the bow back and forth, the operator could rapidly spin the drill bit in alternating directions. This is where the true innovation lay. The Egyptians understood that the cutting power wasn't in the copper bit itself, but in the intermediary. They used a slurry of wet sand, a substance readily available on the banks of the Nile, poured continuously into the drilling hole. The sand, primarily composed of quartz, is significantly harder than copper and even harder than granite. As the copper bit spun, it pressed these millions of tiny, hard quartz particles against the stone surface. The bow-driven motion essentially turned the entire assembly into a primitive but highly effective grinding tool, with the sand acting as an abrasive and the copper bit serving mainly as a delivery system, constantly exposing fresh abrasive grains to the work surface. The results of this seemingly rudimentary process are nothing short of astonishing and can still be seen today in museums around the world. Examine a sarcophagus lid carved from solid granite or diorite, and you will find core drill holes that are perfectly circular, with eerily consistent spiral grooves cut deep into the incredibly hard stone. In some examples, the drills penetrated so deep and with such uniformity that modern engineers have calculated it would have required tons of pressure, a feat that seems impossible with a handheld bow. This has led to fascinating theories that the Egyptians may have scaled up this technology, creating mechanical rigs where multiple bows were operated by teams of workers, or even driven by weights and levers to maintain constant, heavy pressure and a steady rhythm, transforming a hand tool into a form of early industrial machinery. This technology completely shatters our modern preconceptions about the capabilities of so-called primitive tools. We live in an age of hardened steel and diamond-tipped drill bits, of high-speed pneumatic and electric motors, and we assume that working hard stone must have been an unimaginable struggle for ancient people. The Egyptian drill proves otherwise. It demonstrates a profound and sophisticated understanding of material science, the knowledge that a soft metal can be used to harness a harder abrasive to cut the hardest stone. It shows a masterful application of mechanical principles, using a simple reciprocating motion to generate the high-speed rotation necessary for effective grinding. Most of all, it speaks to a culture that valued precision, patience, and ingenuity. They achieved results that would be challenging even with modern equipment, not through magic or alien intervention, but through the intelligent application of physics and the unwavering determination to master their environment, one perfectly drilled hole at a time. While the Egyptians were mastering the art of cutting stone with precision, an entire civilization on the other side of the ancient world was achieving a different, yet equally fundamental, form of exactitude, one that would become the invisible bedrock of commerce, construction, and complex society itself. In the sprawling, meticulously planned cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, part of the vast Indus Valley civilization that flourished from around 2500 BCE, archaeologists have uncovered something that at first glance seems mundane: small, carefully chiseled cubes of chert and other dense stones. These are not mere rocks, they are weights, and they reveal a level of organizational sophistication that is truly staggering. Alongside them, delicate bronze scales with finely balanced beams have been found, indicating a society that did not just trade, but traded with a profound and universal commitment to fairness and precision. The true marvel of these artifacts is not in any single weight, but in the system they represent. These cubes were not randomly made. They conform to a highly standardized and precise weight system based on a uniform unit. The most common weight is a cube that modern researchers call the Indus unit, approximately 13.7 grams. From this foundation, the system scales up in a perfect binary and decimal progression. You find weights that are double that unit, then 4 times, 8 times, and so on, all the way up to large weights that are over 1,200 times the base unit, which would have been used for weighing heavy commodities like sacks of grain or large ingots of metal. The consistency across cities separated by hundreds of miles is what makes this system so revolutionary. A merchant in Mohenjo-Daro and a trader in Harappa, and even at distant coastal outposts like Lothal, were all using the same exact weights. This implies a central authority, a concept of state-controlled standardization that ensured fairness and built immense trust across a vast economic network, a feat of governance that would be impressive even today. This obsession with precision required and reflected a deep, sophisticated knowledge base. Creating these weights demanded more than just a good eye. It required advanced stone working skills to cut and polish hard chert to such consistent dimensions and mass. This points to specialized craftsmen who were, in effect, early metrologists. Furthermore, the existence of such a complex system is impossible without a correspondingly advanced understanding of mathematics. The binary decimal progression shows a comfort with multiplication, fractions, and ratios. It suggests that the Indus Valley people, whose script still remains undeciphered, possessed a theoretical grasp of numbers that was the essential partner to their practical application in the marketplace. The scales themselves, with their finely crafted bronze beams and likely pans, show a mastery of metallurgy and an understanding of the principle of the lever, achieving a balance that could detect minute differences in mass. The impact of this system would have resonated through every layer of Indus society. For the baker selling bread, the jeweler trading carnelian beads, or the farmer bringing wheat to a granary, these weights guaranteed honest transactions. This fairness would have minimized conflict, built economic stability, and fostered a sense of shared civic order. On a grander scale, this same love for standardization is visibly etched into the cities themselves. The bricks used to build Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa are all fired to a standardized ratio, with dimensions that are multiples of this same weight unit. The width of streets and the layout of the famous grid-planned cities all follow precise, repeated measurements. This was a civilization that thought in terms of systems, order, and harmony, applying mathematical precision from the smallest market transaction to the largest urban planning project. In many ways, the humble Indus weight is a more profound testament to their advancement than any pyramid or palace. It represents an abstract idea, the concept of a universal standard, made tangible. It is the foundation upon which science itself is built, for all science begins with measurement. Without a reliable way to quantify the world, experimentation and comparison are impossible. The Indus Valley people, 4,500 years ago, were already laying that groundwork. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that the greatest innovations are not always the loudest or most dramatic. Sometimes they are the quiet, consistent, and utterly essential systems that allow a civilization to function, thrive, and be remembered not for its chaos, but for its impeccable order. But while the Indus Valley civilization was mastering the science of measurement above ground, another ancient culture was achieving something just as extraordinary deep beneath the Earth's surface, turning barren deserts into blooming oases. Imagine the vast, arid plateau of ancient Persia, a land where scorching sun and infrequent rains made large-scale agriculture seem like an impossible dream. Yet, by the first millennium before the Common Era, flourishing gardens, productive farms, and even great cities began to rise in these dry lands. Their lifeblood was not a river or a regular rainy season, but a hidden, underground marvel of ingenuity, the Qanat system. This was not a single device you could hold in your hand, but a massive, sprawling machine carved from the living rock, a testament to a society that learned to work in harmony with the most fundamental forces of nature. The principle was one of elegant simplicity, but its execution was a monumental feat of engineering and communal effort. It began with identifying a water source, typically an aquifer at the foot of a mountain range where groundwater collected from melting snowcaps. From this mother well, teams of specialized workers known as mukanis would begin the daring task of digging, not down but horizontally. They would tunnel backwards through the rock and soil, following a meticulously calculated gradient, just gentle enough to allow the water to flow freely using gravity alone, but steep enough to prevent stagnation. This was the heart of the Qanat, a subterranean aqueduct sometimes stretching for dozens of miles, silently carrying life-giving water from the moist highlands to the parched plains below. The precision required was immense. A slope too steep would cause erosion and collapse, while a slope too shallow would halt the water's journey. The mukanis used simple but effective tools and ancient surveying techniques, often aligning the tunnel by sighting on fires lit at the mouth of previously dug shafts to maintain their true course over incredible distances. What makes the Qanat so much more than a simple tunnel are the vertical access shafts that punctuate its entire length, dug straight down from the surface to the canal below. These shafts served a brilliant triple purpose. First, they provided crucial ventilation for the workers digging deep underground, a life-saving necessity in an environment with limited oxygen. Second, they were the means for removing the immense quantities of spoil and rock excavated during the construction, hauled up in buckets by teams of laborers. And third, and perhaps most importantly, these shafts became permanent maintenance access points. For centuries after the Qanat was built, Muqanis could descend these shafts to clear blockages, repair walls, and ensure the continuous, clean flow of water. This design created a stunning visual signature on the landscape, long lines of circular craters, like a string of beads across the desert, marking the hidden river flowing silently beneath the sands. The impact of this technology on Persian society was nothing short of revolutionary. A single Qanat could provide a reliable, year-round water supply for drinking, irrigation, and even powering watermills, enabling the foundation of cities like Tehran and Isfahan, which literally grew around these subterranean lifelines. The system was inherently sustainable and equitable. Because the water flowed by gravity, it required no energy to operate, and the communal nature of its construction and maintenance fostered a strong sense of shared responsibility and water rights, with carefully allocated time slots for different farmers to access the flow, preventing conflict and waste. This ancient model of water management stands in stark contrast to many modern, energy-intensive solutions like deep well pumping, which can deplete aquifers at an unsustainable rate. The Qanat, by tapping gently into the water table and transporting it without evaporation loss, represents a perfect synergy between human need and environmental balance, a lesson in sustainable engineering that is more relevant today than ever before as communities worldwide grapple with the escalating crisis of water scarcity. While the Persian Qanat system harnessed gravity to conquer vast distances underground, another ancient innovation was busy meticulously measuring those very distances on the surface, transforming the chaotic experience of travel into precise, quantifiable data. Picture a Roman official tasked with planning a new road to connect a distant province to the heart of the empire. He needs to know exactly how long the road will be to calculate the cost, the time required for legions to march, and the spacing of way stations. He doesn't rely on guesswork or the unreliable reports of travelers. Instead, he attaches a curious device to the axle of his chariot. As the wheels turn, this mechanism quietly and automatically counts every single revolution, and with a soft, regular clink, it drops a pebble into a box for every Roman mile traveled. This was the genius of the Greek Odometer, a device that brought mathematical certainty to the ancient world's expanding horizons. The mechanics of this invention, as detailed by the engineer Vitruvius and the great inventor Heron of Alexandria, are a masterpiece of geared precision. The core of the device was a set of carefully calculated gears connected to the rotating wheel of the chariot or cart. The fundamental problem to solve was simple yet required brilliant engineering: how to translate the large number of wheel rotations into a single, countable event representing a specific distance. The Roman mile was standardized as 5,000 Roman feet. Knowing the circumference of their standard wheel, ancient engineers could calculate exactly how many rotations constituted 1 mile. The odometer's gear train was designed to reflect this ratio. For instance, a first set of gears might be set to turn once for every 400 revolutions of the wheel. This slower turning gear would then engage another set that finally triggered the release mechanism, after the precise number of rotations needed for 1 mile. The final action was often a small lever that would tip a compartment, allowing a pebble or a small ball to fall into a bronze basin, creating an audible signal that another mile had been completed. This was an analog computer in its purest form, performing a complex mathematical function through the relentless, turning logic of interlocking teeth. The practical applications of this tool were the bedrock of imperial administration and exploration. For the Roman Empire, with its famed network of roads stretching over 250,000 miles, the odometer was indispensable. It allowed for the accurate mapping of these vast routes, ensuring that milestones were placed with exact precision. These milestones were not merely symbolic, they were critical infrastructure. They told a legionary how far he was from the next fort, a merchant how long his journey would take, and an imperial courier how to pace his relay for maximum speed. This accurate distance measurement was also fundamental for land surveying, the process of dividing and taxing conquered territories. With an odometer, a land surveyor could reliably measure the perimeter of a field or the boundaries of a province, turning the landscape into a quantified, manageable asset. The device brought a new level of order and efficiency to the monumental task of governing a continent-spanning empire, proving that information, even in its most basic form of a counted mile, is power. The legacy of this simple pebble-dropping machine is far greater than its original design. The fundamental principle of the odometer, counting wheel rotations to measure distance, did not fade away with the Roman Empire. It was rediscovered and refined during the Renaissance, finding its way into the carriages of the wealthy and the tools of early modern surveyors. This direct lineage can be traced right into the dashboard of every modern car, where the digital odometer continues its ancient task, now counting in tenths of a mile or kilometer. This unbroken thread of innovation highlights a profound and timeless human desire to not just experience the world, but to measure it, to understand our place within it in concrete terms. The Greek odometer stands as a powerful testament to this impulse, showing that long before satellites and GPS, ancient innovators were already building the mechanical minds that would help us chart our path through the world, one turning wheel at a time. From the meticulous measurement of roads to the grim calculus of the battlefield, ancient innovation found another powerful expression in the art of siegecraft. If the odometer was a tool of empire building, the ballista was the engine of its conquest and defense, a machine that transformed the chaotic fury of combat into a terrifyingly precise science of destruction. This was not a simple catapult that lobbed rocks in a high arc. The Roman ballista was a direct fire weapon, a massive, crossbow-like artillery piece that utilized the incredible power of twisted rope to launch a heavy bolt or stone with flat, rifle-like trajectory over hundreds of meters, capable of punching through enemy formations, fortifications, and even ship hulls with shocking force. Its development marked a revolution in military technology, moving warfare beyond the reach of the hand-thrown spear and into the realm of engineered projectile power. The secret to the ballista's devastating performance lay in its core mechanism, torsion power. Unlike later trebuchets that used a counterweight, the ballista's energy was stored in two separate vertical bundles of tightly twisted sinew or horsehair, each housed in a heavy frame. These bundles, known as skeins, acted like powerful springs. Into each skein was inserted a wooden arm. To load the weapon, a crew of several soldiers would use a windlass mechanism to winch back a slider that held the projectile, which simultaneously pulled the two arms backwards, twisting the skeins to an incredible degree of tension. This process stored a tremendous amount of potential energy. When the trigger was released, the arms would slam forward with violent speed, transferring all that stored energy into the projectile. The genius of the design was its symmetry. The two arms and two skeins worked in perfect opposition, creating a balanced and stable launch that resulted in far greater accuracy and consistency than any single-armed weapon could achieve. The engineering tolerances had to be exact, as even a slight imbalance in the torsion of the two skeins would send the projectile veering wildly off course. The logistical brilliance of the Roman military machine is perfectly illustrated by how they deployed these complex weapons. A full-sized ballista was a massive piece of equipment, far too heavy and cumbersome to move assembled. The Romans, masters of practical organization, solved this by designing them for rapid disassembly and transport. A ballista would be broken down into its key components: the heavy wooden frame, the metal fittings, the skein frames, and the torsion bundles themselves, and carried in wagons as part of the legion's baggage train. Upon reaching the battlefield or a siege site, specialized engineers and craftsmen attached to the legion would reassemble the weapon with practiced efficiency. This modular approach meant that the Roman army could bring overwhelming artillery power anywhere it went, setting up entire batteries of ballistae to rain down precise fire on enemy positions, a capability that gave them a decisive advantage over nearly every adversary they faced. The psychological impact of the ballista was as potent as its physical destruction. For soldiers on the receiving end, there was no warning whoosh of a thrown spear or lofted stone. A ballista bolt arrived with terrifying suddenness, often silently until the very last moment, before striking with enough force to impale multiple men in a single, gruesome shot. The sound of the arms cracking against the stop beams was a distinctive and dread-inducing signature on the ancient battlefield. This ability to project power and fear from a safe distance was a force multiplier, demoralizing enemies and allowing Roman commanders to dictate the terms of engagement. The ballista represents the zenith of pre-gunpowder ballistic technology, a perfect marriage of material science, mechanical physics, and military necessity. It stands as a stark but powerful reminder that some of humanity's most brilliant leaps in engineering have been driven by the ancient and enduring imperative of conflict, a dual-edged legacy of ingenuity born from the desire to protect, conquer, and survive. Yet even as the Roman ballista redefined warfare with its brutal torsion-powered precision, a world away in ancient China, a different kind of machine was achieving a far more subtle and profound marvel, not of destruction but of unerring orientation. During the tumultuous era of the Three Kingdoms around the 3rd century CE, the legendary engineer Ma Zhang was said to have constructed a magnificent chariot for the emperor. Atop this ornate, man-drawn carriage stood a small wooden figure, its arm outstretched, as the procession began its journey, winding through the dusty plains of the imperial court. The assembled officials witnessed something that must have seemed like pure magic. No matter which way the chariot turned, left, right, or in a complete circle, the figure's arm remained steadfastly, immutably pointed toward the south. This was the legendary south-pointing chariot, a device that served as a mechanical compass centuries before the magnetic compass was commonplace, and its secret was a piece of mechanical genius so advanced it would not be seen in the West for over 1,000 years. The true brilliance of this invention was its purely mechanical solution to a complex navigational problem. At its heart was a sophisticated system of differential gearing, a concept that forms the core of every modern automobile's axle. The chariot's wheels were connected through an intricate assembly of interlocking wooden or bronze gears. When the chariot moved in a straight line, both wheels turned at the same rate, and the gears moved in perfect unison, keeping the central figure locked in its southern orientation. The true test came with any turn. If the chariot turned right, the right wheel would slow down or stop while the left wheel continued to rotate. This difference in motion was instantly calculated by the differential gear assembly, which would then engage a compensating set of gears to rotate the figure on its platform. The gears would precisely counteract the chariot's turn, rotating the figure to the left at exactly the same rate the chariot was turning right, thereby perpetually correcting its alignment to the south. It was a flawless analog computer, performing real-time calculus using nothing but wood, metal, and impeccable geometric logic, a breathtaking achievement of purely kinetic intelligence. Beyond its staggering mechanical function, the south-pointing chariot held a significance that resonated deeply within the Chinese cosmological world view. The south was not merely a direction on a map, it was a sacred cardinal point directly associated with the emperor himself, who traditionally faced south when holding court, embodying the warmth, light, and supreme authority of the sun. A device that could constantly indicate this celestial direction was therefore a powerful political and philosophical symbol. It represented the emperor's divine mandate to rule and the harmonious order of the cosmos, demonstrating that the celestial order could be mirrored and mastered through human ingenuity. The chariot was a tangible bridge between the earthly realm of engineering and the heavenly realm of the stars, a declaration that the empire's power was in perfect mechanical alignment with the fundamental forces of the universe. Its presence in a procession was a dramatic performance of imperial stability and cosmic certainty. The existence of this device fundamentally challenges a long-held, Eurocentric narrative of technological progress. For centuries, the history of innovation was often told as a story that culminated in Europe, with figures like Leonardo da Vinci and the industrial pioneers of the 18th century portrayed as the primary wellsprings of mechanical genius. The south-pointing chariot, with its sophisticated differential gearing from the 3rd century, stands as silent, stubborn proof that this is simply not the whole story. This level of mechanical complexity would not be described in European texts until the 16th century, and not applied practically until the invention of the modern automobile. The chariot forces us to expand our view and recognize that the torch of invention has been passed back and forth across continents and cultures throughout history. It highlights a global tapestry of innovation, where brilliant ideas emerged independently in different parts of the world, often far earlier than traditionally acknowledged, reminding us that human creativity is a universal constant, not the exclusive property of any single civilization. While the Romans and Chinese were mastering mechanics and metallurgy above ground, a forgotten civilization on the island of Crete was achieving a revolution in quality of life that would not be matched in Europe for over 3,000 years. The sprawling palace of Knossos, the ceremonial and political heart of the Minoan civilization, was not just an architectural marvel for its grand courtyards and vibrant frescoes. Hidden beneath its floors and within its walls lay a technological secret that speaks to a society with values we would recognize as remarkably modern. A sophisticated, integrated plumbing and sanitation system that provided fresh water, removed waste, and offered a level of comfort and public health that was utterly unprecedented in the Bronze Age world. The sheer scale and complexity of this system is revealed in its components, many of which were excavated by Sir Arthur Evans in the early 20th century. The Minoans crafted tapered terracotta pipes that fit snugly together, with the narrow end of one pipe slotting into the wider end of the next. This clever design created a self-sealing joint that minimized leaks under pressure. These pipes were not laid haphazardly. They were carefully graded on a slight but precise downward slope to ensure a consistent flow of water through the palace using nothing but gravity. This network delivered fresh spring water from sources miles away into the heart of the complex, channeling it into beautiful alabaster basins and elegant fountains that would have provided drinking water and cooled the air. But the true stroke of genius was in what happened next. The same system then carried the wastewater away through a separate, parallel network of drainage pipes that ran beneath the floors, efficiently channeling it out of the living quarters and into large stone sewers that ran through the streets of the town surrounding the palace. The most astonishing feature, however, was found in the private quarters. Several rooms contained a technology so advanced that it feels almost anachronistic, a flushing toilet. These were not simple pits, they were finely crafted stone seats with a wooden lid, situated above a curved terracotta conduit that acted as a drain. A small conduit of flowing water ran right beside the toilet. A user could pour water from a jug into this channel, or perhaps divert the flow directly to flush waste down through the drain pipe and into the main sewer system outside. This was a concept of personal sanitation and hygiene that simply did not exist elsewhere in the ancient world at this time. It represents a profound concern for cleanliness, odor control, and the separation of waste from living spaces that we typically associate with much later periods of history. This entire hydraulic network required an advanced understanding of physics and civil engineering. Maintaining the correct gradient over long distances to ensure flow without erosion or blockage was a complex surveying challenge. The system also needed regular access points for maintenance and cleaning, indicating that the Minoans had a concept of public works upkeep. This was not a temporary installation. It was a permanent, integral part of the urban infrastructure. The presence of such a system in a palace suggests it was a privilege of the elite, but evidence of simpler drainage and water supply in other Minoan towns indicates these ideas filtered through their society to some degree. The existence of the Minoan plumbing system completely shatters the simplistic image of ancient life as universally crude and unsanitary. It forces us to confront a much more nuanced reality. Here on Crete, a civilization reached a peak of comfort and practical engineering that prioritized human well-being in a very tangible way. Their achievements in hydraulic management were not about conquest or monument building, but about creating a civilized, healthy, and pleasant living environment. This focus on quality of life and public health is a startlingly contemporary value, making the Minoans feel strangely familiar despite the vast gulf of time that separates us. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that progress is not always linear, and that a society can achieve a sophisticated harmony with its environment, mastering the flow of water to serve human dignity, only for that knowledge to be lost and have to be painfully rediscovered millennia later. Leaving behind the intricate plumbing of the Minoans, we journey north and forward in time to a discovery that would radically reshape our understanding of Bronze Age Europe, transforming it from a continent of mysterious, isolated tribes into a land of sophisticated sky watchers. In the year 1999, two treasure hunters armed with metal detectors were illegally scouring the top of a wooded hill near the town of Nebra in Germany. Their equipment signaled a hit, and what they unearthed would become one of the most significant and controversial archaeological finds of the modern era. They pulled from the earth a bizarre object, a bronze disc about the size of a large pizza, heavily corroded and encrusted with green patina, but with unmistakable flashes of gold. Unaware of its immense historical value, they sold it on the black market along with bronze swords and axe heads found beside it. For over 2 years, the disc passed through the shadowy world of illicit antiquities trading, its price soaring as its notoriety grew, until a daring sting operation by Swiss police and German archaeologists recovered it in a Basel hotel room, saving it from being lost to history forever. Scientific analysis would later confirm its authenticity and its staggering age. It was buried around 1600 BCE, making it the oldest known realistic depiction of the cosmos anywhere in the world. After careful conservation, the true majesty of the Nebra Sky Disc was revealed. The bronze field, now cleaned, served as a deep blue-green night sky, a color achieved not by paint but by a carefully applied paste of malachite, creating a permanent, shimmering patina. Upon this celestial canvas were arranged appliques of gold, each hammered thin and fastened with tiny rivets. The imagery is breathtakingly clear. A large golden circle and a smaller, crescent-shaped one clearly represent the sun and the moon. Scattered between them are 32 smaller circles, with one distinct cluster of 7, a number and pattern that strongly suggests the Pleiades star cluster, a key celestial marker in ancient cultures across the globe. But the story doesn't end with a simple star chart. Later, 2 golden arcs were added to the disk's rim, one on each side. These are now understood to represent the solar solstice arcs, the range on the horizon between which the sun rises and sets between summer and winter. Finally, a third addition was made at the bottom, a dramatic ship-like curve of gold, often interpreted as a mythical solar barge, a vessel believed to carry the sun across the sky or through the underworld at night, blending the astronomical with the mythological. This sequence of additions is what makes the disk so much more than a static map. It was a functional, sophisticated astronomical instrument. Researchers believe it was a complex calculator designed to harmonize the lunar and solar calendars, a problem that has challenged timekeepers for millennia. A lunar year of 12 months is about 11 days shorter than a solar year. If left uncorrected, the seasons would slowly drift through the calendar. The key was the Pleiades cluster. By observing the position of the moon relative to the Pleiades, a Bronze Age priest or astronomer could determine when it was necessary to insert a leap month to bring the lunar calendar back into sync with the solar agricultural cycle. The golden arcs on the rim served as a manual guide, allowing the user to hold the disk up to the horizon and compare the actual sunset position with the ideal solstice points marked on the gold. This portable device effectively allowed a single person to manage the entire ritual and agricultural calendar for their community, predicting the optimal times for planting, harvesting, and religious ceremonies with an authority derived from the heavens themselves. The profound implication of the Nebra Sky Disc is that it shatters the old image of prehistoric northern Europe as a cultural backwater. The copper for the disc came from Austria, the gold from Cornwall in England, and the tin needed to make the bronze from yet another distant source. This alone proves the existence of vast, interconnected trade routes, but more importantly, the knowledge encoded upon it shows a deep, scientific observation of the sky that was being systematically applied. This was not primitive sun worship. It was a data-driven effort to find order in the cosmos. The disk represents a beautiful, seamless fusion of science, art, and religion. It is a scientific instrument crafted with an artist's touch to serve a priestly purpose. It bridges the gap between the tangible world and the spiritual realm, showing that for these ancient people, understanding the mechanics of the sky was inseparable from understanding the will of the gods. It forces us to look at the heavens not with modern telescopes, but with ancient eyes to see a sky not of random stars, but of stories, cycles, and a clockwork order that could be held in your hands, a golden key to the rhythm of the world itself. While the Nebra Sky Disc used precious metals to map the heavens high in the Andes Mountains, an empire was building its vast administrative network not with gold or silver, but with something far more humble, knotted strings. The Inca Empire, the largest in pre-Columbian America, stretched over 2,000 miles along the western coast of South America. governing a population of over 10 million people across some of the most rugged terrain on Earth. To manage this immense domain without a system of writing as we know it, they developed one of history's most unique and sophisticated information technologies, the quipu. To the untrained eye, a quipu appears to be little more than a tangled collection of colorful cords, a decorative fringe perhaps, but to a trained Inca administrator, known as a quipucamayok, or keeper of the knots, this was a dense, structured, and reliable data storage device, a tactile library of the empire's entire economic and social fabric. The physical structure of a quipu reveals its logical brilliance. It consists of a main, horizontal primary cord, from which hang multiple pendant cords. These pendants could then have their own subsidiary cords, creating a hierarchical, branching tree of information. The system's language was built on a combination of variables, each carrying specific meaning. The position of the cord, its place in the sequence hanging from the primary cord, represented a particular category of data, perhaps a specific village or type of commodity. The color of the cord was another critical layer of information. Different dyes sourced from plants and minerals could signify anything from the type of object being counted, like gold, corn, or llamas, to a geographical region or even a social class. The final and most precise layer was the knot itself. The Incas used a decimal-based system of knots. A figure 8 knot represented the number 1. A long knot with a varying number of turns could represent the numbers 2 through 9. And most importantly, a cluster of granny knots represented tens, hundreds, thousands, and even 10,000s, with the position of the cluster on the cord denoting its place value. This allowed a quipucamayok to record complex numerical data with absolute precision, from the number of bushels of potatoes in a storehouse to the precise count of men eligible for military service in a distant province. This system was the beating heart of the Inca state, a bureaucratic marvel without paper. Runners called chasquis would carry quipus along the empire's famous road network, relaying data from the far corners of the realm to the capital at Cusco. Imperial administrators could then compile and compare these reports, using them to allocate labor, distribute resources, manage taxes, and conduct census counts. The quipu enabled a centrally planned economy on a massive scale, all without a single written word. Its efficiency and accuracy were so trusted that some chroniclers report they were even accepted as legal evidence in courts of law. This challenges one of the most deeply ingrained biases in our understanding of history, the idea that writing is the sole necessary hallmark of an advanced civilization. The Inca Empire proves that a complex society can achieve breathtaking levels of organization and administration through an alternative, non-textual system of information. They found a way to code data in 3 dimensions through color, position, and not creating a system that was both portable and incredibly dense. The most tantalizing and unresolved mystery of the quipu, however, moves beyond mere accounting. Early Spanish chroniclers noted that after the conquest, Inca elders would sometimes use their quipus to recall history, songs, and genealogies. This has led to a compelling and controversial theory that some quipus were not just numerical databases, but narrative texts capable of encoding stories, myths, and perhaps even poetry. If true, this would mean the quipu was a fully fledged writing system, but one based on a tactile, symbolic logic completely alien to the phonetic alphabets of Europe. The effort to crack this potential code is one of the great detective stories of modern archaeology. Researchers are now using advanced computing and data analysis to look for patterns in the few hundred surviving quipus, searching for non-numerical repetitions and structures that could represent syllables, words, or concepts. It is a painstaking process, like trying to decipher a language without a Rosetta Stone, as the Spanish, in their campaign to impose their own culture, systematically destroyed thousands of quipus and silenced the quipucamayaks who could read them. The quipu stands as a powerful testament to the diversity of human innovation. It reminds us that technology does not have to follow a single, predetermined path. In the high Andes, the solution to the problem of information management was not ink on a page, but fiber between the fingers. It was a system perfectly adapted to its environment and culture, lightweight, durable, and without need for a flat surface to read or write upon. Its surviving fragments are a haunting legacy, representing both the incredible sophistication of the Inca mind and the tragic fragility of knowledge. Each knot is a silent question, a locked door to a lost world of thought. The ongoing quest to understand the quipu's full potential is a humbling journey, forcing us to expand our definition of writing and to acknowledge that some of history's most profound secrets may not be carved in stone but tied in string, waiting for the right hands to finally unravel their meaning. Yet even as the quipu encoded information through tactile knots in the vibrant intellectual centers of the Hellenistic world, a different kind of intelligence was being engineered, one that sought not to record life, but to mimic it with breathtaking theatricality. Imagine walking into the great library of Alexandria or the temple of a powerful deity, and being greeted not by a priest but by a statue. As you approach, you place a coin in its palm. The figure's eyes seem to follow you as its arm slowly lowers, depositing the offering into a sacred basin. Suddenly, a hidden door swings open automatically, granting you passage into the inner sanctum. Meanwhile, in a nearby theater, an entire mechanical play is unfolding on a miniature stage. Tiny figures forged from bronze and wood move with uncanny purpose. Hercules draws his bow to slay a dragon. A bird on a branch chirps a melodious tune, and a puppet theater tells a tragic story of sailors and storms, all driven by an unseen, automated force. These were the wonders of Hellenistic automata, the ancient world's most sophisticated robots, and they reveal a culture obsessed with the boundary between the artificial and the divine. The driving forces behind this mechanical revolution were geniuses like Philo of Byzantium and Heron of Alexandria, whose texts provide the blueprints for these incredible devices. They mastered the use of three primary power sources, each applied with brilliant ingenuity. Elaborate water wheels and complex systems of siphons and valves could create slow, powerful, and continuous movement, perfect for powering an entire theatrical sequence. Weights carefully calibrated and dropped with precision provided a reliable and predictable source of energy to drive gears and levers for a set duration. And of course, steam harnessed from a sealed boiler as seen in Heron's Eulipyle offered a potent force for creating dramatic, surprising motions. The real magic, however, lay in the control systems. These engineers invented the world's first programmed sequences using simple but devastatingly effective components. Ropes would be carefully wound around rotating axles in a specific pattern. As the axle turned, the winding and unwinding of these ropes would actuate levers at predetermined times. They used falling grains of sand or seeds to measure time intervals, tipping scales that would then trigger the next part of the sequence. This was analog computing at its most creative, a mechanical logic that could orchestrate a series of events with flawless timing, creating the illusion of a mechanical mind making decisions. The purposes of these automata were as varied as their designs, reflecting the complex values of Hellenistic society. In temples, they served as miracles engineered to inspire piety and awe in worshippers. A self-moving statue or a door that opened on its own was not seen as a clever trick. but as a genuine manifestation of the god's presence and power, a tangible interaction with the divine that encouraged more generous donations. In the royal courts, they were the ultimate status symbols, dazzling foreign dignitaries and showcasing the ruler's access to the most brilliant minds and advanced technologies. For the philosophers and scientists themselves, these devices were far more than toys. They were profound philosophical experiments. By creating machines that could mimic life, a bird that sang, a figure that poured wine, they were grappling with fundamental questions about what life actually is. Is it a divine spark, or is it merely a complex set of physical processes that can, in theory, be replicated? These automata were physical arguments in a debate about the nature of existence, the soul, and the mechanics of the universe itself. The legacy of these ancient robots is far greater than their original context. They are the direct intellectual and mechanical ancestors of the automata that fascinated the Islamic Golden Age, which in turn inspired the clockwork marvels of the European Renaissance. Every complex cuckoo clock, every wind-up toy, and every modern industrial robot follows a principle of programmed motion that was first fully realized in Alexandria 2,000 years ago. These devices force us to reconsider the very definition of technology and progress. We often assume technology is driven solely by practical need, the need to build, to farm, to fight. The Hellenistic automata show us that technology is also driven by pure, unadulterated wonder. It was the desire to delight, to astonish, to inspire, and to question that pushed these engineers to their greatest heights. Their work stands as a timeless testament to the power of curiosity and play, proving that the urge to create something magical, something that blurs the line between the made and the born, is one of humanity's most powerful and enduring engines of innovation. Deep in the humid jungles of the Mexican Gulf Coast, a civilization now known as the Olmec laid the foundation for all subsequent cultures in Mesoamerica. And while their influence echoes through the art and myths of the Maya and Aztec, their most enduring and enigmatic legacies are the colossal stone heads that stare out from the past with an expression of stoic, ancient power. 17 of these monumental sculptures have been discovered, each one a single, gargantuan piece of basalt volcanic rock, meticulously carved into the likeness of a distinct, helmeted individual. They are truly massive, with the largest standing over 3 meters tall and weighing an almost incomprehensible 50 tons, the equivalent of 50 small cars. These are not assembled mosaics. Each head was painstakingly shaped from a single, flawless block of stone, a feat that immediately raises the question that has baffled archaeologists for over a century. How did a society without metal tools, draft animals, or the wheel achieve such a monumental task? The first and most staggering challenge was the material itself. The basalt used for these heads did not come from a convenient local quarry. It was sourced from the Tuxtla Mountains, specifically the summit of Cerro Sintepec, a journey of over 160 kilometers from the Olmec heartland sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta. This was not a gentle downhill slope. It was a trek through treacherous swamps, across raging rivers, and over rugged, jungle-choked terrain. The Olmecs were not just moving a heavy object, they were moving dozens of them, each one a 50-ton testament to their determination. The prevailing theory is that they used a combination of immense manpower and brilliant logistics. They likely carved the rough shape of the head directly at the quarry to reduce some weight before transport. Then, using thick ropes crafted from durable local fibers, hundreds, if not thousands, of workers would have hauled these behemoths onto massive wooden sledges or rollers. The process would have been agonizingly slow, a coordinated dance of leverage, pulley systems, and raw human strength, with teams constantly repositioning logs in front of the sledge to create a rolling road through the wilderness. But the overland theory, while impressive, might not tell the whole story. A more recent and compelling hypothesis suggests the Olmecs may have turned the landscape itself into a machine, harnessing the region's extensive network of rivers and waterways. After the initial, grueling haul from the mountain to the nearest river, the colossal heads could have been loaded onto enormous, raft-like barges. The basalt, being denser than water, would have sunk, so these barges would have had to be incredibly buoyant and stable, likely constructed from countless logs lashed together. Once secured, the current of the river would have done most of the work, floating these titanic sculptures deep into Olmec territory. From there, a system of canals, which archaeologists have found evidence of at sites like La Venta, could have been used to bring the heads right to their final ceremonial destinations. This aquatic theory transforms the narrative from one of pure brute force to one of sophisticated hydrological engineering, showing a people who understood their environment intimately and used its natural forces to accomplish the seemingly impossible. Once the stone arrived at its destination, the true artistry began. Using only harder stones like jadate and obsidian for their carving tools, Olmec sculptors painstakingly pecked, ground, and polished the rough basalt into the smooth, refined portraits we see today. The level of detail is astonishing. Each head is unique, depicting a specific individual with distinct facial features, suggesting they may be portraits of powerful rulers or revered ancestors. They wear intricately carved helmets, often adorned with symbols that might represent players' gear from the Mesoamerican ball game, a sport deeply intertwined with mythology and power. The final polishing gave the heads their characteristic sheen, making the dark stone gleam in the sunlight, a powerful visual symbol of authority and perhaps even divinity. This transformation from a raw boulder to a polished, personalized monument represents an investment of communal effort that is almost unimaginable, speaking to a society with a highly centralized authority and a deeply shared religious or political vision. The colossal heads are more than just sculptures. They are ultimate statements of power and organizational genius. The ability to command the labor required for such projects implies a complex, stratified society with a ruling elite capable of planning, feeding, and motivating a huge workforce for projects that offered no immediate practical reward. There were no cranes to rent, no diesel trucks to call, just human coordination on a grand scale. This completely shatters the old-fashioned notion of early Mesoamerican cultures as simple, small-scale village societies. The Olmecs were clearly a civilization of engineers, artists, and logistical masters. Yet, for all they tell us, the heads guard their deepest secrets closely. We still do not know the names of the individuals depicted, the exact reason for their creation, or why the civilization that made them eventually declined, with some of the heads even being deliberately damaged and buried by the Olmecs themselves in ancient, mysterious rituals. They stand as silent sentinels on the timeline of history, undeniable proof of a great and powerful culture whose story remains, in so many ways, waiting to be fully told. The legend of Damascus steel begins not in a laboratory, but in the heat of battle, where the fate of empires could hinge on the quality of a warrior's blade. Crusaders facing Saracen armies in the Near East returned to Europe with terrifying accounts of Islamic swords that possessed almost supernatural properties. These weapons were said to be so sharp they could slice a silk scarf floating in the air, so resilient they could cleave through European broadswords without notching, and so beautiful they featured a distinctive, wavy surface pattern that resembled flowing water or a field of grain. This was not mere myth. It was the result of a material science revolution that had been perfected in the forges of Syria and Persia, creating a blade so advanced its secrets would remain elusive for nearly 1,000 years. The raw material for these legendary blades was not ordinary iron. It was a special type of high-carbon steel known as woots, which originated in southern India and Sri Lanka. Woots was produced in small, cupcake-sized ingots using a sophisticated crucible process. Indian smiths would place wrought iron and carefully selected plant material, which acted as a carbon source inside a sealed clay pot. This crucible was then heated in a charcoal furnace for hours at a carefully controlled temperature. In this sealed environment, the carbon from the plant matter would slowly diffuse into the iron, creating a steel that was exceptionally homogeneous and contained a very specific carbon content of around 1.5%. These Woots ingots were then traded along ancient routes to blacksmithing centers like Damascus, which became so famous for working the material that its name became synonymous with the steel itself. This is where the true magic happened in the hands of the master smith. The Woots ingot was a precious and difficult material to work with. The smith would first heat it and then forge it with painstaking precision, carefully controlling the temperature to stay within a narrow window. If the steel got too hot, the carbon would burn out, ruining the ingot. If it was too cold, it would crack under the hammer. Through a long, rhythmic process of heating, hammering, and folding, the smith would gradually draw the ingot out into a blade shape. But this was not simple shaping. It was a deliberate process of micro-managing the steel's internal structure. The specific thermal cycling, repeatedly heating and cooling the steel at precise intervals, caused the carbon within the steel to precipitate out in the form of microscopic carbides. These carbides, primarily iron carbide known as cementite, formed into incredibly hard particles. The most critical and mysterious step was the final heat treatment and the very slow, controlled cooling of the blade. As the steel cooled from a specific temperature, the cementite particles would arrange themselves into bands and clusters within a softer, more flexible matrix of steel. This unique internal structure is what created the blade's famous surface pattern. When the finished blade was polished and lightly etched with acid, the hard carbide bands resisted the acid and remained shiny, while the softer steel areas were eaten away, becoming darker. This revealed the flowing, watery pattern that was the unmistakable signature of true Damascus steel. This pattern was not just for show, it was a direct map of the blade's extraordinary internal material properties. The microscopic, super-hard carbide particles along the etching lines acted like a continuous, self-renewing saw blade, giving the edge its legendary ability to stay sharp through brutal use. Meanwhile, the softer, more flexible steel matrix surrounding these hard particles prevented the blade from becoming brittle and snapping, allowing it to absorb the shock of impact. This combination of extreme hardness and high toughness is the holy grail of metallurgy, a balance that modern knife makers still struggle to achieve in a single material. And then the knowledge vanished. Sometime after the 17th century, the production of true Damascus steel swords ceased. The exact reasons are a cocktail of historical change. The trade routes that supplied the crucial Woots ingots from India may have been disrupted. The guilds of master smiths, who passed their exacting techniques down orally from father to son, may have died out due to war, famine, or a lack of apprentices. The specific sources of ore or the carbon-rich plant materials used in the original Woots process may have been lost. For centuries, the secret of Damascus steel became one of history's great technological mysteries. European smiths tried desperately to replicate it, creating pattern-welded swords by forged welding layers of different irons together. While these weapons were beautiful and effective in their own right, often called Damascus today, they were a different technology entirely. A clever imitation that could replicate the pattern but never the legendary performance of the original. The quest to unlock the secret became a scientific detective story that stretched into the modern era. In the 1980s and 90s, researchers like Dr. John Verhoeven and Dr. Alfred Pendray finally began to crack the code, using scanning electron microscopes to analyze the microstructure of ancient Damascus blades. They identified the presence of carbon nanotubes and nanowires within the steel, an astonishing nanotechnology achieved centuries before the field even had a name. These nanostructures, formed from the carbides, contributed to the incredible strength and sharpness. Through painstaking experimentation, they rediscovered the critical importance of the slow cooling cycle, which had to be done over a matter of days, not hours, to allow the carbide bands to form correctly. They confirmed that tiny traces of impurities in the original Wootz ingots, like vanadium, molybdenum, and other elements from the original Indian ores, were essential catalysts in forming the distinctive microstructure. This modern reverse engineering proved that the ancient smiths were not merely skilled artisans. They were empirical materials scientists who, through generations of meticulous observation and experimentation, developed a process that manipulated matter at the molecular level. Their achievement stands as a powerful, humbling reminder that not all progress is linear, and that some peaks of human ingenuity, built on a foundation of passed-down experience rather than theoretical science, can be so high that they are lost from view for ages, waiting patiently for a future generation to finally understand their brilliance. Standing silently in the courtyard of the Qutb Minar complex in Delhi is a metallic sentinel that has defied one of nature's most relentless forces for over 1,600 years. The Iron Pillar of Delhi rises 7 meters into the air, a single, seamless piece of wrought iron that weighs more than 6 tons. In a region with distinct seasonal monsoons and humidity, where modern steel structures require constant painting and maintenance to fight a relentless battle against rust, this ancient column shows barely a speck of corrosion. Its surface, though pitted in places, is mostly smooth and bears a 6-line Sanskrit inscription glorifying the exploits of a king named Chandra, generally believed to be Chandragupta II of the Gupta Empire, dating its creation to around the year 400 of the Common Era. This isn't just an old artifact, it is a living challenge to our modern assumptions about material science, a masterpiece of ancient metallurgy that has stood unwavering while empires rose and fell around it. The pillar's legendary resistance to rust is not a result of magic or some lost alchemical secret, but a stunningly sophisticated accident of ancient chemistry and craftsmanship. Modern metallurgical analysis has revealed that the answer lies in its unique chemical composition. The iron used by the Gupta-era blacksmiths was remarkably pure, with very low sulfur and manganese content impurities that typically accelerate corrosion in modern steels. But the real secret weapon was an unusually high percentage of phosphorus, nearly 1%, which is about 10 times higher than what is found in most modern industrial iron. This high phosphorus content is the critical factor. When the pillar's surface is exposed to air and moisture, the phosphorus actively promotes the initial formation of a thin, protective film called a passive layer. This layer is a complex mixture of iron, oxygen, and phosphates that acts as an invisible, solid shield. It is extremely stable and adherent, meaning it bonds tightly to the underlying metal and prevents oxygen and water from penetrating further to cause the destructive flaking rust we see on modern steel. The climate of Delhi actually plays a supporting role in this process. The alternating cycles of wet and dry seasons help to continually stabilize and maintain this protective barrier, making the pillar a perfect union of material and environment. The creation of the pillar itself was a logistical and technical marvel that speaks volumes about the advanced state of Indian metallurgy in the first millennium. Forging such a massive, single piece of wrought iron required a monumental effort. Historians and engineers believe it was likely made by a process called forge welding. Teams of blacksmiths would have worked enormous bellows to feed multiple furnaces, heating small lumps of raw iron in a solid state. These white-hot lumps, known as blooms, would then be painstakingly hammered together on a massive anvil by squads of smiths working in perfect rhythm. They would repeatedly heat, hammer, and fold the metal, gradually consolidating these individual pieces into a single, dense, homogeneous mass. This was not a one-day project. It would have taken weeks of coordinated, exhausting labor. The result was a pillar with a remarkably uniform structure and very few slag inclusions or weak points, a testament to an incredibly high standard of large-scale production and quality control that was simply unparalleled in the ancient world. Beyond its scientific wonder, the pillar is also an important cultural landmark. The Sanskrit inscription on its surface is a valuable historical record, but its original purpose and location are still debated. It was likely erected not in Delhi, but hundreds of miles away in central India, possibly in a temple complex dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, and may have originally been topped by a statue of the deity's mythical bird mount Garuda. It was only centuries later, after being moved and re-erected by several different rulers, that it found its current home. For the countless visitors who circle it today, the pillar is the center of a popular legend that standing with your back to the pillar and wrapping your arms around it will bring you good fortune. While the practice is now discouraged to protect the monument, it highlights how this ancient iron column has transcended its original identity to become a permanent fixture of local culture and myth, a symbol of enduring strength and stability that continues to capture the public imagination. The true legacy of the Iron Pillar of Delhi is the profound lesson it offers to modern materials science. In an age where we fight corrosion with energy-intensive methods like galvanization, chromium plating, and special polymer paints, the pillar presents an elegant, passive alternative. It achieves longevity not by fighting the environment with a sacrificial coating, but by working with it to form a self-healing, protective skin. Researchers today are actively studying its passive layer, hoping to reverse engineer the principles behind it to develop new, more sustainable anti-corrosion treatments for modern steel. This ancient artifact challenges the very notion of progress, suggesting that our ancestors sometimes found simpler, more durable solutions by mastering the materials they had at hand, rather than relying on complex industrial processes. It stands not as a relic of a primitive past, but as a peer to modern engineering, a silent, gleaming testament to a time when craftsmanship and a deep, empirical understanding of nature could create something truly and literally timeless. High in the steamy jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, the ancient Maya were conducting a grand experiment in cosmic architecture, turning stone and mortar into some of history's most precise and enduring astronomical instruments. At sites like the magnificent city of Chichen Itza, structures we once viewed simply as temples or palaces reveal a far more sophisticated purpose. They were not just buildings dedicated to the gods, they were carefully calibrated machines designed to track the complex dance of the heavens with an accuracy that still inspires awe. The most famous of these is El Caracol, a unique and enigmatic observatory whose very name, meaning the snail, comes from the spiral staircase found within its central tower. From a distance, it looks almost modern, a cylindrical tower perched atop a broad, two-tiered platform, resembling a celestial watchtower gazing out over the flat jungle canopy towards the endless sky. The genius of El Caracol lies not in complex moving parts, but in its static, immutable architecture, which was precisely aligned to capture specific celestial events. The entire building is slightly skewed on its platform, not by accident, but by deliberate design to align with the most extreme rising and setting points of Venus on the horizon. For the Maya, Venus was not just a bright star, it was a powerful deity known as Kukulkan, associated with war and rain, whose movements were meticulously recorded in their Dresden Codex. The observatory's narrow, slit-like windows are not mere decorative features. They function like the sights on a giant rifle, framing specific patches of the sky. One of these slits is perfectly aligned to mark the sunset on the spring and autumn equinoxes. Another captures the southernmost extreme setting of the moon, an event that occurs on an 18.6-year cycle. To achieve this, Mayan astronomer priests would have had to make observations over generations, carefully noting the patterns and then encoding that long-term data into the very fabric of their stone calendar. This architectural precision was the engine of Mayan society, driving both their sacred rituals and their daily survival. The Maya were master farmers in a challenging environment, and their agricultural cycle was entirely dictated by the celestial clockwork they observed. The appearance of the Pleiades star cluster in the spring sky, visible through a specific corridor in El Caracol, signaled the time to clear the fields and prepare for planting, as it coincided with the beginning of the rainy season. The movements of the sun marked the solstices and equinoxes, dividing the year into periods of planting, growing, and harvesting. But this knowledge also held profound religious power. A priest astronomer standing in the darkness of El Caracol could predict the exact day when the feathered serpent god Kukulkan would appear to slither down the side of the main pyramid at Chichen Itza during the equinoxes, a dramatic play of light and shadow that would cement his authority and demonstrate a divine connection to the cosmos. The observatory was the tool that allowed them to not just observe the universe, but to actively participate in its cycles, aligning human activity with what they saw as a sacred, celestial order. This deep integration of science, architecture, and spirituality makes the Mayan observatories so much more than ancient ruins. They represent a complete worldview, a philosophy that saw no separation between the earthly and the cosmic. Every stone was placed with intention, every alignment served a dual purpose of practical necessity and profound religious significance. In an age without telescopes or written star charts, they used the most permanent material they had, limestone, to build a permanent record of the sky's movements, a machine that would continue to function for centuries. Their work demonstrates a patient, generational dedication to understanding the universe, a pursuit that continues to captivate astronomers and archaeologists today. The silent stones of El Caracol stand as a powerful testament to humanity's enduring desire to find our place in the cosmos, to measure time by the stars, and to build monuments that echo the harmony of the heavens here on Earth. While the Mayan priests of Chichen Itza used grand stone towers to track the cycles of Venus, Viking navigators on the open North Atlantic faced a far more immediate and personal challenge, finding their way under skies that were often a featureless dome of gray. The legendary Norse sagas speak of their incredible voyages, from the fjords of Scandinavia to the icy shores of Greenland, and even the mysterious coast of North America, a place they called Vinland. For centuries, historians puzzled over how they achieved such feats of navigation without a magnetic compass, especially during the long summer days of the midnight sun or under the perpetually overcast skies common in the northern latitudes. The answer, long suspected to be a combination of skill and myth, was dramatically confirmed by a small, unassuming artifact found in a long-abandoned Norse convent in Greenland, the Qanat disc. Discovered in the ruins of a Benedictine convent on the island of Qanat, this fragment of a wooden disc dates back to the 10th or 11th century. At first glance, it seems almost crude, a piece of pine about 7 centimeters across, with a hole in its center and a series of lines carved into its surface. But to a trained eye, these markings reveal a sophisticated and portable navigational tool. The central hole is where a small, removable pin called a gnomon would have been inserted. The carved lines are not random scratches. They form a precise pattern of curves and dashes radiating from the center. Researchers believe these lines correspond to the shadow path cast by the tip of the gnomon at specific times of the day, essentially creating a series of predetermined bearing lines. On a clear day, a Viking navigator could hold the disc level and rotate it until the shadow cast by the gnomon fell directly along one of these carved curves. The point where the shadow touched the curve would indicate a specific time, and the orientation of the disc would then reveal the cardinal directions, transforming a simple shadow into a reliable compass. But the true brilliance of this device was its potential use in concert with another Norse navigational secret, the Sunstone. Under perfect conditions, the disc alone would suffice. However, the northern seas are rarely clear. On a fully overcast day, when no shadow was visible at all, a navigator could reportedly use a crystal of Iceland spar to locate the sun's position through the cloud cover by detecting the polarization of sunlight. Once the hidden sun's bearing was found with the sunstone, the navigator could then align the Qanat disk accordingly. Even without a visible shadow, the pre-marked lines on the disk would then provide a fixed reference point, allowing the navigator to maintain a steady course long after the sun had again disappeared behind the clouds. This combination of tools, the crystal for sensing the invisible and the disk for recording and holding that information, created a resilient and multifaceted navigation system that could function in almost any condition. The Qanat disk is a powerful testament to Viking pragmatism and ingenuity. It was not a ceremonial object or a symbol of status. It was a working tool, worn and used, designed to solve a critical life or death problem with elegant efficiency. Its simplicity is its genius, using nothing more than wood, a pin, and a fundamental understanding of the sun's movement. This very simplicity, however, is also what makes it so rare. Wood, rope, and leather, the primary materials of everyday Viking life, are highly perishable. The Qanat disk only survived because it was preserved in the dry, cold environment of the Greenlandic ruin. It forces us to confront a humbling reality of archaeology. Our view of the past is overwhelmingly shaped by what endures. We have countless iron swords and silver hoards from the Viking Age, but we have only one Qanat disk. How many other such ingenious wooden devices, maps, calculators, or tools, have simply rotted away, leaving no trace for modern historians to find? This single surviving fragment is likely just a ghost, a lone representative of a whole class of common navigational aids that were once standard issue on every Viking longship. Their complex knowledge passed down through practice and oral tradition, now almost entirely erased by time. But beyond the tangible, archaeological evidence of drills and observatories lies a far more enigmatic and tantalizing realm, the world of myth. Scattered throughout the ancient texts and oral traditions of cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia, are stories of machines so advanced they seem to leap from the pages of science fiction. These are the antediluvian machines of legend, the technologies that supposedly existed in a forgotten age before a great flood reset human civilization. While they may not leave behind corroded gears or stone foundations for us to excavate, these stories form a powerful and persistent undercurrent in our collective imagination, challenging the very edges of what we believe is possible in the ancient world. Consider the vivid descriptions found in ancient Indian epics like the Mahabharata and various Sanskrit texts, which speak in astonishing detail of flying vehicles called vimanas. These were not simple chariots of the gods pulled by mythical beasts. They are described with a mechanical specificity that is jarring. The text known as the Samrangana Sutradhara devotes entire chapters to their construction, outlining different types for various purposes, from those that fly on their own power to others that are piloted. It describes them as being made of specific metals, powered by heated mercury and the manipulation of solar energy, and equipped with weapons of devastating power. The text even mentions the pilots needing to wear protective suits. The parallels to modern aircraft and even theoretical propulsion systems are so uncanny that they have fueled endless speculation about whether these stories could be distorted memories of a real, advanced technological civilization that was lost to time, a concept that pushes the boundaries of conventional archaeology to its absolute limit. Across the Mediterranean, Greek mythology presents its own mechanical wonders. The bronze giant Tolos, described as the guardian of Crete, was said to patrol the island's shores, hurling massive boulders at approaching enemy ships. Crafted by the divine smith Hephaestus, Tolos was animated by a single, life-giving fluid ichor that flowed through a single vein sealed by a bronze plug in his ankle. This description reads less like a description of a living creature and more like a technical manual for a primitive robot, complete with a hydraulic system and a critical maintenance port that represented its only vulnerability. In another tale, Hephaestus creates automated handmaidens out of gold to assist him in his forge, beings that could think, speak, and perform complex tasks. These stories sit in a fascinating gray area between divine miracle and mechanical invention, suggesting that the ancient Greek imagination was already grappling with the concept of artificial life and automated labor centuries before the first gears of the Antikythera Mechanism were ever cut. These myths, from the Vimanas to Tolos, serve a purpose far deeper than simple entertainment. They act as a cultural and psychological repository for humanity's deepest aspirations and anxieties about technology. They represent a universal desire to transcend our physical limitations, to fly like a bird, to possess the strength of a giant, to create life from inert matter. In an age where the line between the possible and the impossible was more fluid, these stories provided a narrative space to explore the potential and the peril of technological power. They ask the same ethical questions we grapple with today. What responsibilities come with creating such power? Could our own creations ultimately turn against us? The story of Tolos is, in its essence, an ancient cautionary tale about a powerful automated defense system that eventually becomes a threat requiring a clever hack to disable. Ultimately, whether these legends contain a kernel of historical truth or are purely products of the brilliant human imagination is perhaps less important than what they tell us about ourselves. They are not lies, but rather a different kind of truth, a testament to the timeless and universal drive to innovate. They remind us that every technology we have today, from the airplane to the robot, existed first as a dream, a story, a seemingly impossible idea in the mind of a storyteller or a visionary. These ancient myths challenge us to keep an open mind about the past, to acknowledge the vast gaps in our historical record, and to appreciate that the human spirit of invention has always reached for the stars, even if the only tools available were words and wonder. They blur the line between the archaeologist's trowel and the poet's pen, suggesting that the history of technology is not just written in metal and stone, but also in the enduring power of a story well told. What emerges from this grand tour of 27 ancient marvels is not just a collection of fascinating trivia, but a profound and unified lesson about the very nature of human ingenuity. The most striking pattern we see is a universal drive to solve real-world problems with breathtaking elegance. This was not innovation for its own sake, it was deeply practical. The Roman concrete mixer and the Persian Qanat system were born from the necessity to sustain vast empires, providing water and shelter on an unprecedented scale. The Viking Sunstone and the Chinese south-pointing Chariot answered the fundamental life-or-death need for navigation, transforming the terrifying unknown of the open sea or a featureless plain into a manageable, charted space. Even the Hellenistic automata, which seem like playful toys, served the practical purposes of inspiring religious devotion and demonstrating political power. Each machine, in its own way, reveals ancient minds obsessively focused on manipulating their environment to improve human life, proving that necessity is not just the mother of invention, but its most demanding and brilliant teacher. Yet, this practicality was never separate from a deep sense of wonder and a desire to understand the cosmos. The Antikythera Mechanism and the Mayan observatories were not merely calendars. They were profound philosophical statements, physical manifestations of a belief that the universe operated on a knowable, mechanical order. The precision of the Egyptian drill and the self-healing property of Roman concrete speak to a patient, empirical investigation into the hidden properties of materials, a form of science conducted through generations of careful observation and hands-on experimentation. This beautifully dismantles the modern illusion that science and spirituality are opposing forces. For these ancient innovators, the act of measuring a solar cycle or forging a Damascus steel blade was a way to participate in the divine order of the cosmos, to bring human craftsmanship into harmony with universal principles. Their work was a single, integrated pursuit of truth, where the line between the engineer, the priest, and the artist was often invisible. Perhaps the most humbling lesson is the collaborative and cumulative nature of this progress. We tend to romanticize the lone genius, an Archimedes or a Zhang Heng, but their breakthroughs were almost always built upon a foundation of shared knowledge that crossed cultures and centuries. The Antikythera Mechanism incorporates Babylonian astronomical calculations. The Wootz steel for Damascus blades was forged in India and then perfected by Syrian smiths. The Norse sunstone navigation technique likely has roots in earlier Scandinavian practices. These were not isolated flashes of brilliance but nodes in a vast, slow-moving network of information exchange, where ideas traveled along trade routes, were captured in wars, and were preserved and refined in great libraries and workshops. This challenges the simplistic, Eurocentric narrative of linear progress that culminates in the European Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. Instead, we see a global tapestry of innovation, where the torch of discovery was passed back and forth across continents, with peaks of advancement appearing in different places at different times, often to be later forgotten and independently rediscovered. This leads us to the crucial, overarching theme, the fragility of knowledge. The history of technology is not a smooth, upward trajectory. It is a story of peaks and valleys, of brilliant zeniths followed by devastating collapses. The secret of Greek fire was so tightly guarded that it vanished completely. The precise metallurgical knowledge to forge Damascus steel was lost for centuries. The sophisticated gear systems of the Antikythera Mechanism have no parallel in the archaeological record for over 1,000 years. Civilizations fall, libraries burn, trade routes are severed, and specialized guilds die out without passing on their secrets. This pattern forces us to view our own technological age with a dose of humility. Our advancements feel permanent, but history shows us that no knowledge is truly secure. The most advanced society is only a few generations away from potentially forgetting the principles that power its world, a sobering reminder of our responsibility to preserve and widely disseminate our understanding. Ultimately, these 27 machines are more than relics, they are mirrors. They reflect a human spirit that has always been inventive, resourceful, and relentlessly curious. They show us that our ancestors were not primitive beings struggling against nature, but sophisticated problem solvers whose intelligence was expressed through the materials and paradigms of their time. Their legacy is not just in the specific devices they left behind, but in the timeless principles they demonstrate: the power of observation, the value of patience, the importance of collaboration, and the profound connection between understanding the world and shaping it. They inspire modern engineers to look to the past for sustainable solutions, like the self-healing properties of Roman concrete, and they challenge us to build a future where our own innovations are not just powerful, but as enduring and harmonious with the world as the greatest achievements of the ancient world. From the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the forged brilliance of Damascus steel, the 27 ancient machines we have explored today reveal a past far more sophisticated, more inventive, and more technologically daring than our history books often lead us to believe. They are not merely curiosities or anomalies, they are powerful reminders that human ingenuity has never been confined to a linear path of progress. These artifacts challenge our most fundamental assumptions about antiquity, forcing us to replace the image of primitive societies with one of brilliant engineers, visionary scientists, and master craftsmen who manipulated their world with a skill that can still leave us breathless. They ignite a profound curiosity, not just about what they are, but about the minds that conceived them and the cultures that fostered such innovation. They stand as permanent proof that the drive to push the boundaries of the possible, to understand the universe and bend it to our will, is a timeless and universal human trait. As we reflect on these marvels, it is worth turning that same spirit of inquiry onto our own era. Consider for a moment how future generations might look back at the technologies we take for granted. Which of our inventions will stand the test of time, not just physically but in the narrative of history? Will our smartphones and satellites be seen with the same awe we reserve for the Antikythera Mechanism, or will they be footnotes in a much larger story? The lesson from these ancient machines is that context is everything. The Hellenistic automata were wonders for temples and courts, not factories. The Viking Sunstone was a pragmatic tool for survival, not a catalyst for an industrial revolution. Our own technological landscape is shaped by our values, our economies, and our immediate needs. The true legacy of our time may not be the most powerful device we create, but the most enduring idea we nurture. This journey through forgotten technologies is more than an archaeological tour. It is an invitation to adopt a new perspective on history itself. It asks us to question the stories we have been told, to look for the quiet genius in the overlooked artifact, and to appreciate that every era has its own kind of brilliance. It teaches us humility, showing that knowledge is fragile and that great peaks of achievement can be lost to time, only to be rediscovered centuries later. But most importantly, it connects us to the endless chain of human creativity, the same spark of curiosity that led a Roman engineer to perfect concrete, a Chinese astronomer to build a seismoscope, or an anonymous Assyrian craftsman to polish a lens is alive in us today. It is that spark that will continue to drive us forward, to solve the great challenges of our time, and to create wonders that will one day, too, become the ancient mysteries for a future generation to uncover. Thank you for joining this exploration into the depths of history. If you enjoyed unraveling these mysteries with us, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the past, and share your thoughts on which ancient machine fascinated you the most in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and never stop exploring the incredible stories hidden just beneath the surface.